Negotiations finally coming to an end as Congress finalizes a deal on the fiscal cliff, but many leaders are still unhappy with the outcome, pointing to this troubling ratio. For the $15 billion in spending cuts, there are $620 billion in spending hikes. So is this a fair deal? Joining us right now is the chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, Congressman Darrell Issa. Congressman, you could not get yourself to vote for it. Was it because of the ratio I just went over?
It was. The fact is that Republicans stand for smaller government and fiscal responsibility. There was nothing last night that was fiscally responsible. It was all about maintaining, if you will, the status quo of kick the can down the road. $4 trillion will be added to the debt over the next 10 years as a result of last night's vote. And in fact, there weren't just no spending cuts. This was a $300 and some billion increase, effectively. And, you know, you mentioned Hurricane Sandy. The fact is the Speaker had no choice. Had we brought up a vote, marked it down to 20 or so, 27 billion, where it should be to provide the actual relief, the Senate wasn't there to take it. So effectively, it wouldn't have become law, and the Speaker knew it.
Yeah, the other problem, Congressman, is the fact that the fiscal cliff deal actually sets up another fiscal cliff. Here in about 2 months, you guys are you've kicked the can down the road about 60 days where you're going to have to address the sequester in 60 days, you know, the gigantic defense and domestic cuts, and then you're going to have to do something about the debt ceiling, which the good news for the Republicans is you've actually got some leverage over the president when it comes to then cutting spending.
Yeah, right. I've heard this story before. The fact is, Steve, that 2 months from now, the president and the Democrats in the House and the Democrats in the Senate are all going to be talking about higher corporate taxes or higher taxes somewhere on, quote, the rich in order to pay for not having sequestration. You haven't heard it yet because the president wants to get to Hawaii and finish off his hometown vacation. But the fact is that you heard it last night on the floor when Chairman Camp tried to say, well, now finally we brought finality to the taxes, and of course immediately Levin got up and said, no, don't, you're not done. There's more. There was no certainty in taxes last night other than the top 1 or 2% are paying dramatically more come this year, and in fact the 98% are getting a deferral of their taxes. But those taxes will have to be paid. You can't overspend $1 trillion a year and not figure you're taxing someone someday.
Congressman, I want to ask you, you know, you mentioned President Obama. Let's hear what he had to say last night and then get your reaction to that.
While I will negotiate over many things, I will not have another debate with this Congress over whether or not they should pay the bills that they have already racked up. If Congress refuses to give the United States government the ability to pay these bills on time, the consequences for the entire global economy would be catastrophic. People will remember back in 2011, the last time this course of action was threatened, our entire recovery was put at risk.
He won't hear of a debt ceiling debate. Your response?
Well, in this case, I'm going to be a little bit more with the president than you might expect. The conservative position, from my view, is you pass a budget that has in the budget, when it leaves the House, a debt ceiling increase in it. You send it over to the Senate and say, look, we want to have that debt ceiling increase. It goes with the budget, and thus the president has an opportunity to get them simultaneously. That's the change we've got to make. We've got to get to where, when the House votes on appropriations and budget, ultimately we're voting on what we agree to spend, we also are willing to pay for. But we're not there yet. The president hasn't had a budget in his entire presidency, no matter who was in charge in the House or Senate, and he doesn't want one. He will, in fact, be the greatest spending president of all time, and there's no question at all. He plans to leave office with $1 trillion a year of deficit happily.
Why is the president doing that? He must know it doesn't work. What's his motive? Does he want us to be like Greece?
Well, first of all, the amazing thing is, in his statement, his written statement yesterday, he was pretty outspoken that he was thrilled that this was the most progressive tax system, at least in his lifetime. And he probably, not probably, I'm sure he wants to make it more progressive. Ultimately, This is a hard left president who talks from the center and leads from the left. There's no question at all. This will be a more unionized nation as a result of the election. This will be a more progressive nation in many, many ways. And I think the president's just fine with it. Remember, yesterday's vote was all about the president's promise to stick it to the rich. It wasn't about any kind of austerity or fairness. Understand, Louis Gohmert had the best 15 seconds last night when he got up and thanked the Democrats for finally recognizing that 98% of the Bush tax cuts were for the middle class and not for the rich.
That's
well,
right.
I got to ask you, we have two other quick topics to get through. Number one, do you believe the Speaker has earned the right to still be Speaker? Will you support him?
Well, I do support the Speaker. He had a tough situation, one in which America was saying, Mr. Speaker, you lead the entire House. Understand, Republicans weren't with him, but the House was. 151 of us voted no. Just like TARP, the vast majority of Republicans disapproved of something that became law, and I think that sometimes happened. The Speaker showed leadership at a time in which Harry Reid went home and went to bed and left it to the Vice President. At least Speaker Boehner was always straight, honest with us, and he allowed the regular process to occur, gave us all the opportunities. I don't think last night is going to go down in history as anything other than an opportunity missed.
Congressman, I just have to throw one more thing in there about Sandy and you know, what happened last night. There are a lot of people from both sides of the aisle that disagree on what happened there. You know, your colleagues, Peter King, for instance, Michael Grimm, are very upset with that. They're on, you know, the floor last night, absolutely, you know, appalled by what happened. What do you have to say to people who live in this area, who cannot go back, who have lost everything, who don't understand the finer points of these bills and what happened there, except they understand that they're not going to be getting any money anytime soon?
Well, I think what you say, I'll say to you as a New Yorker, obviously a concerned New Yorker, your two senators packed this with pork, had the opportunity to have a $27 to $30 billion legitimate relief package, packed it with pork, and then dared us not to vote on it. The Speaker made the right decision, which was if the Senate wasn't going to be there to concur with the essential dollars that should have been sent, then there was no point in his asking people to take a divided vote for the second time in a night for no particular benefit. The fact is the Senate didn't do their job. They sent us a bunch of pork and then left town, and that was just wrong. And I think the Speaker has the support of the vast majority of Republicans that if we're going to provide relief, we can't allow it to be doubled, essentially, with unrelated pork, no matter where the relief is. And the relief will come early next year, but it'll come at the $27 billion level, or I don't expect to be voting for it.
They did the same thing with every military bill. To fund the troops, they said sure, and everybody put in their own thing, and it just ballooned the deficit more than the war itself. Congressman Darrell Issa, thanks so much.
Thank you, Brian.
Happy